Let's turn our attention to the complicated issue of taxis and tax. There's concerns over what's being called tax avoidance by the taxi industry. The Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, made this announcement in Parliament earlier this week. He says that SARS, the revenue service, received about 5 million rand from the entire industry last year. Well, the industry is estimated to be making billions of rands, and now there's call for drastic action. Well, what does that action look like, and how is it the taxi industry is only paying about 5 million rand in tax? Well, luckily, I have a tax expert with me to help me understand this. Professor Keith Engel from the South African Institute of Tax Professionals. Prof, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, particularly about this. I cannot help but wonder if there are those who are wondering about the term tax avoidance. Simply put, this is illegal, surely.
Yeah, well, this is simple tax evasion. If you don't pay your tax, you don't file the returns, that's just simply illegal. But this points to a larger problem in the economy overall. Part of your economy is informal. And in your informal sector, you don't have lawyers, you don't have accountants, you just simply don't pay. And that is where a good chunk of the tax gap is. This is a perfect example, 5 billion versus 5 million. But it's definitely evasion, illegal. It's not avoidance. It's not an issue for discussion. It's a theoretical matter.
I've spoken to other analysts and experts in the past, Professor, as well, who suggest the kind of money that could be brought into the fiscus by the taxi industry could in some way actually boost the economy. This is a much bigger problem than, as we're calling it now, tax evasion or tax avoidance. This is having an impact on the larger economy, surely.
Yeah, well, this is a problem. It's not just the taxes. It's a whole part of the outside economy that's not reporting. And that's really what SARS has to go after, as well as some other things. I mean, there are different levels of concerns. There's multinationals. You have to worry about the wealthy. And then you have to worry about the informal sector. And each thing has its own response. Now, when you're dealing with the informal sector, the problem is SARS is designed to review information received to them. When you're going after the illegal sectors like the taxi, you have to actually send your man on foot and do it. And the only legal way to get it is to have an estimated tax. Now, the problem with estimated taxes is, getting a decent estimation on a taxi is not so simple. I think they can do quite a bit, but it takes a bit of time, and it requires its own enforcement strategy. And I think what the taxi industry says they're willing to engage, we'll see.
What is the Finance Minister and SARS do about this, though? It's a mammoth task. There must be a few 100,000 taxis around South Africa. Not suggesting all of them are tax evading or tax avoiding, whichever term we want to use now. But this is a mammoth task. How do we get on top of this? What would you advise the Finance Minister to do?
Well, I think, look, first of all, this is not new. This has been going on for 20-some-odd years. And the problem of the informal sector not paying its fair share. Now, again, its fair share needs to be smaller because, let's face it, these people are not rich. Originally, we were afraid of the taxi industry, remember, because they had guns and all this other things going on. So they sort of stayed away. So this even goes back to 95 and before. But the real issue is, can you use the current system to collect your fair share of tax? And the problem is the income tax is too complicated for the informal sector. In the informal sector, people don't keep monthly books and records. They might keep gas receipts, but that's all they're really going to keep. And getting people to voluntarily go to the revenue service and pay is hard. And so my feeling is, don't just use the traditional methods. That really, when it comes to the formal sector, we need a new form of presumptive tax in lieu of the income tax. You and I pay an income tax. We're all employees. That system works. But when you're outside of the system, you really need a simplified presumptive tax at a very nominal level, sort of a medallion tax. And it may not be a lot per taxi, but you'll get enough that at least you'll pick up more than you have and what they can afford.
Well, a final question to you, Prof. What's the timeline for a suggestion such as yours? I don't imagine it's going to be much help this financial year.
No, look, if you're going to do a legislative change, you would make a legislative change now and implement it next year. But again, you've missed it for 20 years. So do it right. The other way to do it is what I think they're going to do, is they're going to try to work out an agreement for estimated taxes, which is a subtle form of presumptive tax, and then that's going to take a long time to negotiate. The problem is, if you're going to rely on the normal income tax system where people file, you're going to take a long time to collect. They're too small monies chasing too many people. So you either have a long process starting now over several years, or you have a better system over two and collect a reasonable amount. That's just my view.
Professor, always a pleasure speaking to you. It's not going to be an easy solution. As I say goodbye to you, just to give you an idea of numbers, the Mail and Guardian, cited by the Democratic Alliance on this, 90 billion rand a year is what the taxi industry makes. That was back in 2019, and as you can see, 5 million rand in taxes. No wonder the finance minister is asking questions. Coming up for you.